Okay. Hello, everyone. Another patch out. I think Oleg was just saying a few seconds ago that it's been exactly 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks and a day to be precise, but yeah,
Oh, well, it was meant to come out yesterday.
yeah. And then things got in the way.
Yeah, life got in the way. Yeah, so just a small hotfix patch. We knew we were going to do this as 2.02 was the first big release of the beta of the campaign. So we always knew that unless we'd magically done everything perfect, which as amazing as the job you've
Never
done, Oleg, was
happens.
never going to happen. But yeah, I think people were obviously putting a lot of time to playing it because I think all of the fixes that got, all of the issues that got brought up within a few days of that patch being released. So
Yep.
yeah,
And
there's been a few
it's
other things as well. But
surprising, yeah,
yeah, no,
surprisingly well. Only like two or three really big issues, which was fewer than I expected. I expected there to be more shenanigans going on, but hey, not
well,
gonna look
yeah,
the gift horse in the mouth.
it wasn't rushed out in the first place. You'd spent a good amount of time on it,
Yeah,
so
fair.
it was brought out as a beta because we can't promise how perfect it is. We know there's things we want to improve in, but it was always a good beta. It wasn't a rushed out thing. So yeah, it's gone really good. Yeah, so if you want to talk about the
Okay, let's start talking through the changelog. So, first of all, just a few general things that basically quality of life things. First of all, a lot of units had auras, and the description gave basically zero indication that they had auras or how they could get them. So, anything that doesn't get an aura through a specific ability that you research will now have the aura in its unit description. So, and as an example, the Tau main commander, he gets an aura at commander level 5 or 6, if I remember correctly. I can't remember exactly which level, and it's a damage aura. But there was nowhere was it indicated that that's the case.
so I
So
guess a lot
just
of these
things like
things
that.
you'd only ever know if you actually sort of dug down to core six and started looking through all of the
Or,
commanders and looking for
if you
this
paid
shit.
very close attention to the units, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, so well, something like I know that Space Marines have certain researches that give auras. Obviously, those are not in the unit description because the research will say what it gives and what units it gives it to. So those will be found in the research descriptions. But anything that's not in there and that just kind of exists, or you kind of get strictly by playing the game normally, then that goes into the unit descriptions. I
Yeah.
think I got all of them, but there might be a few that I didn't. So obviously, if anyone has any suspicion of auras that are not properly described, then do give us the
Yeah,
feedback.
that does tie on something I do want to make clear. We
Hmm.
are putting a huge amount of emphasis onto descriptions. Obviously, it's a very big game. It's a very
Yes.
complex game. There's a lot going on. We really do want to make sure the descriptions are perfect. So yeah, if anyone sees any weapon descriptions that look wrong, if they've got old crap still in them, if they're saying stuff that you don't think is true, let us know. If you think there's abilities that or auras, for example, that aren't displayed anywhere properly, and you think there is one, let us know. We've already put a lot of effort into it, but we don't assume that we've done it perfectly. So anyone be very
Especially weapons are probably still a bit all over the place since
yeah.
they're the hardest ones to track down and really keep an eye on.
Yeah, and some races they kind of were redone from scratch. So like the races I did, the
Yeah.
Eldar, the IDH, the SOB, I went through them from scratch. But a lot of races haven't had quite that level of, not I wouldn't say remake, but sort of just redoing all the weapons from scratch and going through them all. So there's likely to be a lot of stuff that's not perfect. But yeah, as it's something that we put a lot of emphasis on. Yeah, we do rely on the community to notice stuff that we haven't noticed. Yeah, there's only so many hours in the day where we can do stuff. We don't get everything. Um, this also ties on to some future plans, things, we want to make things clear. There's already a lot of descriptions. So, for example, the IDH having a lot of flavor text. I forgot to actually do it for this patch. So, next patch, that'll all be gone. Yeah, I mean, it's cool and all, but it's a lot of stuff to read. And I feel that if it isn't actually telling you what is going on in the game, it should just go. So that just to cut down on the amount of shit people have to read and make things as clear as concise, and but also getting all of the information across. So yeah, nobody be shy. We react very quickly, especially with things like descriptions. It's only a few seconds for us to fix it. So if somebody brings it to our attention, probably the moment we
It's a
read
fairly
it,
easy
we're gonna
fix this
fix it.
time.
Within 5 minutes usually. If not, we'll pop it into our documents and get it done before the next patch.
Yeah. So, moving on to the next thing, there were a few grenade launchers that were affecting both your units and your enemy units, whilst there were others that were only affecting enemy units. So we made the call to go with grenade launchers should only affect enemy units, and all grenade launchers should now follow that.
Yeah, the old implementation, made sense. They are something that would damage everyone, but yeah, I think it's the right thing. Make it simpler, make it a
Yeah.
bit more friendly. I mean,
Yeah.
the game's already difficult enough. We don't need to unnecessarily make it as complex as
Like maybe
possible.
for artillery, I can see the argument, and I'm not even sure if all artillery does damage to everyone, but for a grenade launcher, it just seems overkill.
Yeah, yeah. No,
So
I agree with that. I'm really happy with this change. It's a small change, but I'm really happy with that.
yeah. So moving on to the stronghold for a second, onto the campaign for a second, there were a few issues with strongholds causing fatal scar errors and just general things that I cleaned up. And the
Was
other
that
thing that
only
happened,
Necrons, or was there a few other strongholds?
Necron, IG, and there was a thing with the Eldar stronghold to where a building was invulnerable. This didn't
Oh yeah,
actually affect the mission because it and none of the triggers were reliant on it. But there was like a building that was invulnerable and it would just sat there. So those have been fixed. And
sweet.
then I finished redesigning a lot of the honor guard because in the previous patch I got a lot of the uh nuts and bolts down in terms of their health and how many squad members they should have and all of that stuff.
Yeah,
But something I didn't really have a look at is their weapons. So, for example, something like the Space Marine or CSM Honor Guard, which are single models, were quite underpowered because they had base weapons of basic Space Marines, and I'm talking like vanilla Space
yeah. So
Marines.
let's explain how this
And
works. Most of the campaign now uses the Crucible models. So when you build normal units in the campaign, they are drawing
yes,
from the Crucible files. So they're part of our properly done
yeah,
balance. The uh, Honor Guard in particular, they use completely different files. So they were
yes,
basically just a holdover from the original game, basically.
vanilla, yeah.
Yeah. So they were something that probably a lot of the time would just flat off be just weaker than basic units,
Oh,
because obviously
yeah, yeah.
the
And
balance of Crucible is vastly different to vanilla Soulstorm.
so yes, so basic idea, honor guard should now mostly be properly balanced. This should be especially noticeable with CSM and Space Marines, as their single models actually do decent damage and can wreck quite a few squads on the battlefield by themselves.
Which is always how
Uh,
it's meant to be. They're always meant to
yes.
be something that you save up for and get, and they make a meaningful difference to the
Yeah.
the campaign.
Something that I'm also having a look at is the cost of garrisoning stuff. This is in relation to people have been asking for the if there's a way to implement persistent uh persistent structures as they are in the Dark Crusade stronghold. So for anyone who's not aware, in Dark Crusade, when you fought a battle and you won, it would remember where everything that you built. So whenever you fought, let's say, a defensive battle on that province again, it would remember and spawn back all of your structures. That was never a thing in Soulstorm. However, there are some mods which try to do that. I'm not sure to what success. However, I don't feel like it's super relevant because I have a problem with this mechanic as a whole,
Yeah, so this was
which
something
I
that we
if
we
it's
talked about and actually decided that
yes.
we thought it was
Yeah.
better it wasn't a laziness thing. We decided that, as I'm sure Oleg would explain in a second, we decided that it
Yeah.
was actively a bad mechanic for various
Yes.
reasons.
Yeah. No, it decided it was not a good mechanic. So basic reason I won't go into too many details, but the basic reasoning for it being is that it made garrisoning basically useless and it made skirmish games drag on for way longer than you want to.
Yeah,
Garrison 1, pretty obvious. If you capture every single province, it already has like up to tier 3 structures, so that let's say you can get freaking Terminators as soon as you spawn in. There's no way that's fair.
yeah, it just makes the campaign kind of
It's just
trivial and
yeah, exactly. It just trivializes any sort of defense that you need to do, and it mi- absolutely negates any sort of garrisoning.
yeah. So all you need to do
Which
is once you get into a game, into a position where you're about to win a match, you can then just draw the match, on for another 20 minutes, just build a shitload of stuff, even though you could have already won. Just so that if you do have another match
and
here, you
that's
just get an auto win, and I think that's the big
yeah.
thing. Auto wins. Why do we want that? It's a toxic mechanic if you want to make a good campaign.
Yes, and that's the other thing. With the increase in difficulty, especially on hard difficulty, I don't want to encourage people into that sort of playstyle. Because if the campaign is hard, obviously, if you're able to sit there for 20 minutes once you have already nearly won, you will do so because you don't want to spend another hour trying to defend this province in another skirmish match. But I
Yeah.
don't,
You should be
yeah, that's just
threatened
not a
by
good
the
idea.
enemies attacking you.
Exactly.
It should be a threat. It should be difficult. It should be something you need to tactically,
Mhm.
you know. Otherwise, like I say, it trivializes the whole thing, and it just becomes
Yeah.
every time you take a province and you draw the game on and you leave a full massive base, all you're basically doing is just making it so that you auto win for the rest of the campaign in that province. It's. I understand why people
Yes.
like it because it makes things a lot easier, but that's not really what we're about. We want
It's
to,
yeah, it's not a
yeah,
good mechanic. So obviously, I've already made garrisoning units specifically a lot cheaper, and I'm still looking at the numbers for both garrisoning bases and units because if you're not able to have persistent bases, then your way of defending is to be able to garrison. So the numbers of that maybe need to be tweaked, and maybe some of the units need to be shuffled around.
yeah.
But yeah,
So
that's just
rather than
something
having
I'm
persistent
keeping an eye
bases, we
on.
want to really make sure that the garrisoning feature is powerful and
Yes,
meaningful.
precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So leave the Eldar changes.
Cool.
Is
Yeah.
there anything
So
to talk about
some
there?
stuff of mine then. So Shadow Seer, because we'd implemented some new units, some new icons, I'd accidentally reverted to the previous Shadow Seer icon, which obviously was massively off because the Shadow Seer is a completely different unit now. It's you know a very Harlequin looking unit.
Yeah.
Storm Serpent, I did remove ley mines from all of the lower tier Eldar um, tanks. This was meant to be global for Eldar. I just forgot the Storm Serpent had it, so I've got rid of that.
Yeah.
Nightwings just had some general fixes. I hadn't noticed that they were glitched since adding the shield back to them. So the shield will now just be there from the beginning of the game, as it is for most Eldar vehicles. The shield effect, most Eldar units, apart from the relic units, don't have actual shields. It's a damage reduction. So Nightwings will have that graphic, and then the research, which in its text says that it just increases health regen anyway. It was never an ability of research to add shields. So just tidied it all up. Imperial Guard.
So first thing is a campaign fix. Basically, the command Reaver Titan required the general to be on the field to be able to build it. But in the campaign, you didn't build the general. You built the campaign general, which
It's a
uses
different
a
file,
different
basically.
file. So that whole thing has just been fixed.
Yeah. So I assume before
So
you just
now
couldn't build
the
it on the
yeah,
campaign because you couldn't actually
precisely.
satisfy its prerequisites.
Yeah. Now you just don't need the general to be on the field to be able to build the Command Reaver Titan. So
And is
simple
that
fix.
global? Is that in the
Yes, that's
skirmish as
in
well?
multiplayer as well. Yeah.
Cool.
Multiplayer skirmish as well. Yeah. I didn't really like that requirement, but it didn't really bother me before, so I just kind of left it be. But now that it's actually causing a problem, it's like, yeah, whatever. You can just build the Titan. It's
It's
not
kind of like
like
a
the
bit of a
general
weird
is
unit
difficult to
anyway.
get
It's just
out
kind of
of.
like a random
Yeah,
extra
exactly.
Titan. So I guess we're just going to consider it now just an extra Titan, not like a. It probably, to
Yeah.
be honest, could do with a name change because it's not really anything to do with command. It's just another variant of Titan you can build.
It's supposed to have mechanics tied to it to where you have if you have the general inside of it, then it gets like special buffs and stuff. It's supposed to be like a vehicle for the general, the way the lieutenant tank is for the lieutenants. But neither of those mechanics work particularly well because there's no way to well, you can make it so that only certain units can go into it, but it's finicky, and the amount of stuff that you can do with that is very limited. So the whole implementation of both the general command, like Lieutenant Tank, and the Command Reaver Titan is a little bit awkward. So, for example, the only thing that garrisons the general, or quite frankly, any other unit that you can garrison in it will do, is it will allow it to get war gear. That's the only difference. There's no special mechanics, and they're never really where
And it's also going
all
to
of
disable
those.
things like auras. This is general in the game. If you put a unit into a vehicle, its
Mhm.
aura disappears, and obviously auras,
Ah, the catch is the Reaver Titan has its own aura, which has no link to the general
so
whatsoever.
it has the aura whether the general's in it or not.
Precisely.
Yeah, so just bad implementation from the start.
It's yeah, it's just a mess of ideas. I'll fix it at some point, but for now, this is basically it.
It's just a Titan. Limit of
Yeah.
one still
Yes, limit of one.
cool. So probably a slightly more buffed Titan. Probably slightly more cost effective because of that, but then limited to one. Yeah, cool. Yeah, then I suppose the next three things were just sort of small fixes. Yeah, nothing particularly interesting.
Yeah.
So
Just
with Imperial Guard, the way they work is every time you put another unit in, I think up to a max of 3, it basically switches to another weapon file. So units don't shoot out as such. When you put units in Imperial Guard buildings, they basically activate set weapons on the actual building file. So it's not really units shooting out.
yeah. So
So just
like
the
it
second
doesn't
tier is now
matter
more
if you
powerful.
put conscripts or Kasrkin in a building, they will shoot out the same weapons and do the same DPS.
Yeah,
It's
it's like them taking
annoying.
control of emplaced
Yeah.
weapons.
Yeah.
And then just some stun grenades were increasing speed rather than decreasing it. I think somebody derped with the zero 0.8 versus 1.2 or
Yeah.
whatever the factor is. So yep, that's all fixed. So Inquisition, this is some of my stuff. So a lot of it is fixing what I did last patch. I changed a lot of stuff, making things simpler. So I got rid of a lot of the add-ons that allow you to build stuff, but then also forgot to add some of the requirements back on in terms of limits. So all the limits are just back to what they were before the last patch. So this is the Demon Hunter, Exorcist, Astropath, Death Cult Assassin, and the Calculus Logistics. And then also some just reworked descriptions to make it clearer what the limits were. I don't believe there was ever any indication of what the limit was until you reached it. But now if you just look at the description, it's going to say, limit of 6 leaders from the HQ, for example. I have carried on the concept of making IDH simpler. So the Librarian, I believe, was the single building in the game with the most researchers. It was like 30 researchers, something mad like
Yeah,
that.
it's a lot.
Yeah, so this is something that you were suggesting. So yeah, a lot of it's just been reworked, reshuffled, and then all of the Grey Knight specific researchers, I think it's like 4 of them, they are now in the Grey Knight building just to make
Mhm.
it more obvious that just to make things clearer.
Yeah.
And then this will be
Librarium researches mostly for infantry, and then the Grey Knight specific stuff is in the Grey Knight
yeah,
teleporter.
and then this whole concept will be expanded in the next patch when we also start getting rid of all the research description fluff,
Yeah.
which is not on any other race in the game. That's kind of like an Inquisition Demon Hunters mod idea from when that mod was made, and I think it's just something that we should get rid of just to make the game more streamlined. So one of the researches in the Grey Knight building now. Is the one that gives the Grey Knights range damage resistance. That also gave the Dreadnoughts some extra stuff. That never actually affected the basic Dreadnought. I have added that to it. So just all Dreadnoughts will benefit from the Tome Libra Demonica. All Dreadnoughts have had their descriptions reworked. I can't remember what I added, but whatever. They've had some descriptions added. So the bunker one is probably one for you to talk about. I think I wasn't involved with that.
Yeah, I think this was mostly the Clicking Man's work, but I can talk about it a little bit. Basically, the bunkers for both Sisters and Inquisition Demon Hunters worked very awkwardly because they're kind of like turrets, but they're turrets that you can garrison people into. So so now they have been properly implemented because they just had so many awkward things. They had what looked like an AoE, but wasn't actually an AoE, i.e. the flamer.
Yeah,
So now that has been properly implemented to where it will do damage to everyone around it the way it looks, rather than only a few
probably
targets.
more tying in with the actual original idea. I think this is another one of the things that
Yes,
was
precisely.
a concept many years ago, but was never actually implemented properly.
Properly. Yep.
Yeah. So now it's actually you get the upgrade, and it now is then a big AOE,
Yes.
thing.
And just some general stuff, like for example, when you garrison units into it, it would give the bunker more health, which is like ridiculous.
Didn't make a whole lot of
Like
sense.
it doesn't make any sense. It's just yeah. So that has been removed, obviously, and yeah, just basic stuff.
Yeah. And then obviously Grenadiers, another one of the
Same
grenade
thing.
launchers that were uh,
Not stunning
messed up.
properly.
So yeah. Orcs then. Looters got some new voice lines, thanks to voice actor Konzak. Come to us, I assume, from Unification, so thanks to them. Sisters of Battle, Conflagration Turret, this is exactly the same stuff as the IDH version.
Yeah, bunker and conflagration turret, same stuff.
Yeah.
Again, they were both working very weirdly because the flavor wasn't properly implemented, so this is just all fixes for that.
We'll
And
ignore
then
Tau for a
go to
second.
Tau.
Let's just go to
Okay,
Tyranids.
yeah, sure.
You can talk
Uh,
about that.
Termagant and Hormagaunt restrictions were just wrong. They were claiming that they increase research, resources and other stuff. That's just a relic of Tyranids. It wasn't the case for like ages, but yes. And then another thing that I noticed, which made sense with how strong Tyranid early game was, especially if you go Gaunt's, is you got 100 requisition back when building a lot of Tyranid buildings.
So this is
So
pretty much free
there's
buildings, wasn't it, really? Because they probably didn't cost much more than
yeah,
100 in the first place.
they cost like 150 or something. So yeah, it was kind of like significantly reducing the cost. So basically, for those not in the know, if let's say you build a listening post or a power generator, not only does it give you requisition or power over time, it also gives you a burst when you actually build it. I think it's like 60 or something. So for some reason, that was also a thing for a lot of Tyranid production buildings. So you were to build your Gaunt Hive and it cost you 150, but when you built it, you got 100 requisition back. So yeah, I don't know how this was a thing, but thank you to whoever brought this to my attention, because holy shit, that is
Yeah.
100 requisition doesn't seem like a lot,
It's
but
a fair
in
whack
the
in the early
early
game, though.
game, this made such a big difference because one of the things that I had trouble with is figuring out specifically the Gaunt Rush, and it felt very, very strong, but I wasn't exactly sure how to fix it. And I have a feeling this went a long way towards it being too strong because you just had so much requisition to work with. So now that this has been fixed, we shall see where Tyranids stand in
Yeah.
terms of their power, especially when it comes to early game rushes. They might need some buffs as a result because they may have been overly nerfed because of this. So we'll have to see how
But
all
in
of
that
that
case,
shakes
we'll
out.
buff. It's not an issue. But yeah,
Yeah.
basically, Tyranny is just basically just being too many basicallys there. Tyranids just being randomly richer in the early game. And if you
Yes.
imagine how many gaunts you can get with an extra, if you built a few buildings, an extra 200, 300 requisition, that's a lot of early game extra rec just to throw at the enemy. So
Yep.
yeah, cool. So Tau is the other big change to this patch. So basically we have, I think, for all of these three Titans, it's not really just new models, it's also reworks in many ways. For example, the Tiger Shark in particularly, it had its main weapons that didn't have a projectile, but the damage procced. But then, so that's the rail cannon or whatever. But then the pulse lasers, they had an animation but weren't actually proccing damage. It was just a mess. And then the Nirvana, whatever, and the Riptide, they've just generally had a rework on the weapons. So not just new models, but just a general rework. New voice lines as well for the two walkers. And then all of the Tau researchers have been just gone through to sort of link to the new stuff. This also includes the Riptide. The 104 Riptide wasn't actually getting buffed by the health research that now is. So I'll show them in game in a second. We've also got a new heavy builder model. So the old one looked very fancy, but all it actually was the Space Marine heavy builder model with a Fire Warrior put in the middle of it. But it was literally just a load of Space Marine artwork. It wasn't particularly looked fancy, but it wasn't particularly Taoish. So we have an actual Earthcast Engineer model. And then lastly, Fire Warriors have just had their sight increased from 10 to 15, so they're extremely low. This was a general concept for Tau, being very high range, but having NAF sight to compensate, so you have to use spotters. My issue is that increasing the Fire Warriors isn't going to particularly help the better players, but for more basic, for sort of lower skilled players, a lot of the time they will maybe prioritize Fire Warriors early game because that's like the traditional famous Tau unit. And having 10 sight, you just have awful map awareness. So this isn't really to increase their combat effectiveness, it's just more to give lower tier players just a bit more map awareness. 10 sight, you could have a unit walking past them and you'd never even see them. So yeah, just a small quality of life thing. So yeah, so 4 new models. Let's have a quick look at them. So if I jump into game, if we start off with the 104 Riptide, it looks so much better. Awkwardly enough, now if you build the 10, what's the cheaper Titan, the 101 Riptide, it looks kind of absolute pants now compared. But I love this one. So a few things to note. We do have 2 drones. That is part of the artwork. In the future, I may implement them properly, where you have to get some add-ons, and then these drones will give you something. For now, those 2 drones are purely cosmetic and will be there from the start. Like I say, in the future, maybe they will be something that you'll purchase via add-ons or researches, and they'll give better shielding or better sight or whatever. We can do whatever in the future, but for now, they are just artwork. And then in terms of weapon upgrades, we can upgrade... I can't remember what this weapon is called. But you can upgrade to the Iron Accelerator, which is anti-vehicle, anti-demon, and longer range. Let's have a little look at that. Building. Yeah, so nice big chunky ass Iron Accelerator. Quite sexy laser as well. And then these are some sort of ion rifles or pulse rifles or something. I really should have noted down what these weapons are called. These are anti-infantry, but they can be changed to missile pods, which obviously will change the damage profile to anti-vehicle primarily. Yeah, absolutely love this model, and it comes with new voice lines. Then we got the Nirvana. I'm just going to call it Nirvana. I apologise if it's meant to be Nirvana. I was just never a fan of Nirvana, so I'll call it the Nirvana. Yeah, looks fabulous. The old one had two very different weapons in each arm, even though they looked the same. One was kind of very fast firing, the other one was kind of like a nuke. These are just now two identical, very high power weapons. I was meant to get rid of the Ramora artillery drone. Right, basically, in the next patch, we will be removing the Ramora artillery drone, and moving that to be a separate unit. So in the guidance beacon, we have the gun drones, we have the sniper drones, and we have the Remora stealth drones. That will be added here, and we'll have the Remora artillery drones. So they will just be another unit. I didn't think the point of the Titan randomly having them, and due to art and coding and stuff, they overlap each other. They overlap with the Titan model. They just looked a bit naff and didn't really serve a purpose. So I assume I didn't remove it yet because I didn't get around to adding it to the game. But that'll be in the next patch. That'll be gone. So yeah, pretty simple. No weapon upgrades. Both arms are identical weapons. Just an absolute shitload of damage, long range. And looks absolutely beastly. And then lastly, we have the Tiger Shark. New model, no new voice lines, but now happy to say that all of the weapons work, have firing animations, and the damage actually procs. And just looks better. And we haven't actually shown the new builder, so I've got a new icon for it. Comes with new voices.
Ready for work.
And actually is, a tower unit. No weapons. Obviously, all he's carrying is, sonic screwdriver. Bit Doc 2. But it's the same thing. It's a pretty cheap unit, and it's 4 times the construction speed, and I assume repair speed as well. So a bit less flashy than the old one, but actually looks like a tower unit. And we'll see how it goes. So yeah, I think that is everything for this patch. Like I said, this is just a small patch. The reason we bought it out early, before the big Space Marine chapter rework, is because we wanted the campaign fixes in the game as soon as possible. People have been waiting for a campaign for forever, especially a properly implemented campaign. We then didn't want to say, okay, well, we've released a beta, you've now got to wait 6 weeks or whatever to actually play it without regular crashing. So, that's why we've bought this one out nice and quick. So, yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Yep. Again, short hotfix patch, not that many changes, just some general quality of life stuff mostly.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything you want to mention about the Space Marine patch? Anything else?
Yeah, so I guess we've got an absolute myriad of things that'll be in the next patch. Just small fixes, rebalances, new models for old units, loads of them. There's 2 big things in the next patch though. So obviously we've got the Space Marine chapter rework, which is something we've been talking about for a long time, but we've had so many things we needed to get done first. Kind of a case of wanting the game to be in a great position for the current content before we started adding, more big stuff. I'm glad we're finally doing it. We've not actually started planning it properly yet. As we said before, though, I think it will be 4 new chapters, and then in addition, properly implemented Legion for the Damned. We'll have Legion of the Damned as one of them, just even though it's, I suppose, not as famous a one. It's there's a few models in the game, so might as well use that stuff and add to it. But yeah, they'll all be very different. Really looking forward to it. And then yes, the other rework that has been inspired by a few people bringing to attention some hotkey overlaps in the game. We are going to have a full hotkey rework. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and is something that I believed would be one of the more meaningful changes we can make. I know it's a very boring thing to sort of talk about hotkeys, but obviously each race is huge. There's ridiculous amounts of content. There's units with countless abilities and spells. The hotkey system has always been a mess. You've got Space Marine units, for example, where 4 of the weapon upgrades have the same hotkey. You've got hotkeys all over the keyboard that make no sense. There's no rhyme or reason. I think some
And then
people...
you have yeah. And then you have something like Sisters with like 10 active abilities
Yeah,
that you just need to click through all
yeah.
of the units.
There's a few points. I think unless you sort of main a race and can just over time learn a spread of very random hotkeys. A lot of people don't use hotkeys because there's so many races and they're all different, and even in the race there's no consistency. For example, I mean, even I personally, who does main Eldar, a lot of spells just don't get used because they're just not convenient to use, and especially when you're sort of microing a lot. And yeah, it's a
RTSs
mess.
are already very complicated. There's no need to make them even more complicated by just not being able to click things quickly.
Yeah,
So it's gonna be a full rework. Do you want to talk about the general
yeah.
outline of what you're gonna do?
So the main concept is that it is a unified hotkey system shared by all races. So you when people get used, it's going to take some time for people to get used to it. I'm sure there will be some people who main a race that are going to be a bit pissed, but I don't care. They'll have to relearn it. But the idea is when you get used to how the hotkeys work, you can play any race and it's going to work exactly the same. So ways we're going to
Yeah,
do this
mostly.
is a lot of stuff on the UI will be rejigged to match the hotkeys. So if you've got 5 abilities and the 5 abilities are on your keyboard, they're going to be all in the same place and they're all going to be in order. So you can do things visually. This means, for example, I'll use the Eldar Farseer as an example. When you go into the build menu to purchase the spells, they are in order of tier, hero level. When you then purchase them, they go into a completely different position order on the UI. So already there, it's just everything's getting mixed up. And then the hotkeys for those are then completely random. So, it's just a mess. So how it'll work is that the order that you purchase them in the add-on menu for heroes, that'll be the order then displayed on the UI, and then that will also match to where they are on the keyboard. And then sort of the general idea is going to be something along the lines of, on the bottom row of the keyboard, you'll have grenades for your infantry. Q will be for mobility abilities, so your run, your fleet of foot, your gravitic boosters. Ram for tanks. D is going to be your jump. W and E will be for sort of primary abilities. And then when things have more than those abilities, it'll get cascaded onto the second line. So it'll be W, E, F, G, H, J, K, L. And then on the top row, you've got R for reinforcing your squad, T for attaching, Y for leaders if you've only got the one leader, but if you've got multiple leaders, Y, U, I, O. So very simple, very unified. It'll work the same for every race.
Yes.
I've already completed Space Marines Eldar IDH, and it works perfectly. And yeah, so one caveat, which when we spoke on the Discord server and kind of I sort of gave some of my thoughts, people were like, no, you'll be able to put weapon hotkeys on as well. There'll be space.
There isn't.
There isn't. There will be many units where, because they have few upgrades, there is space, but then that'd just take away all of the consistency and it'd be back to learning things on a unit by unit basis. So the caveat to this new system is I think it's better in every way, but weapon upgrades will have to be clicked. I have just, as I do each race, and then Oleg and Clink as they join me on this job,
Yeah.
we will just be deleting all weapon upgrades globally as a rule, no exceptions.
The hotkeys,
The hotkeys,
not the
yeah.
weapon
Don't worry,
upgrades.
not getting rid of all weapon upgrades, but no, weapon upgrade hotkeys will no longer be a thing. Just to keep the system simple and consistent.
Yeah. Again, if this is causing problems or if specific units really need it, we can add them back in. But I've honestly,
There is no reason.
yeah,
You know, the time you're going to spend, well, the time you're going to save having random weapon hotkeys is not going to make up for the time lost in having a more complex hotkey system.
yes, that is
Later
the
on,
main thing.
if it's demanded and whatever, the numpad numbers are dealt with separately to the numbers on the top of your keyboard, the 1 to 0.
That might be
They
an
are dealt
interesting
with as
use
different
of it, yeah.
hotkeys, so we could potentially add weapon upgrades to numpad numbers. I don't see the point. It's on the opposite side of the keyboard. I think it's just a case of
Yeah.
it's best just to remove weapon upgrade
Yeah,
hotkeys.
and people will just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's everything. I really thought this video would be 15 minutes long, and we've been talking for 40 minutes. I see how last time it was 2 hours.
Neither of us knows how to shut up. You were naive to think this is only going to take 15 minutes.
I thought it was a small patch. Hey, we've fixed the campaign a bit and given you some more town models. No, I think people would appreciate having something a bit longer, just to, because again we give a lot of our thoughts and a lot of the justifications on what we've done.
Yep.
So yeah, as always, we'll always be pretty much on the Discord server all the time if anyone wants to chat. But in terms of patches, it is now going to be a longer period now. This next patch is a huge patch, huge amounts of new content,
Yeah, it's
along with all the
gonna
other
take
stuff.
a while.
It's going to take a
Probably
while,
like
yeah.
2 months at least.
It'll be worth it. I mean, it'll be a huge amount of stuff in addition to the Space Marine chapter rework, but the chapter rework itself is a huge undertaking.
Yeah,
It's not going to be a small system. The Eldar system is always been a work in progress. That's why some of the craft worlds have been implemented, but they're very small. This is my pet project, and I'm slowly building it up as I can justify giving time to it. But no, the Space Marines is an actual big chapter rework where we're going to implement it all in one go as a finished product. Of course, we'll probably build on it at a later date and change things, but it's going to be 5 probably full chapters, lots of extra units, bits of rebalancing, different playstyles per. It's going to be a big chunk of content, and hopefully it's going to be great. I know a lot of people love Space Marines, and it'll be nice to really add some big content for everyone to enjoy.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. We didn't bother streaming this one because we thought it was going to be a short one, but yeah, I'll get this up on YouTube now, and hope everyone enjoys the talk through. So yeah, cheers, thanks, and bye.
Yep. Bye bye.